there! Welcome to an Alice in Wonderland story. I am absolutely delighted that you are here. My name is Cheshire Cat, but you can call me Chess. This story is about a tea party, but not just any tea party, a special tea party where Alice in Wonderland and all her friends show fun things to do while you can have your very own tea party with your loved ones. I know my library friends enjoy a good Alice adventure. One summer day, Alice was enjoying reading her books when the heat made her very sleepy. She dreamed she was falling and landed upon a tea party. Who was there? None other than Mad Hatter, the Queen of Hearts, and yours truly. We invited her to the table. Alice gladly joined them for a spot of tea, and wanting to show her friends something curiouser and curiouser, took out some supplies and a deck of cards.
Hello, my name is Alice. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am going to walk you through how to make your very own card necklace so that you can look dapper for our tea party. Let me gather the supplies and I'll be right back. When gathering your supplies, you'll need some playing cards, scissors, a paper puncher, some tape, and some yarn. The first things first, you'll need to pick your card. Any card will do. I'm going to go with a joker. And you're going to want to fold this up into as small pieces as you can, going hot dog style, like a fan. You're going to go over and under. You're going to want to try and keep it as straight as possible, but you know, things happen. It just adds character. And then you're going to fan it out, and you're going to pick a side, any side will do, to punch in the corners. Like so. Then I'm going to take my tape and just cut off a little tiny bit. You don't need a lot. And then since my tape's a little wide, I'm actually going to cut it in half, just so it's a little bit crisper. And then I'm going to fold my card again and just go right down the middle. Again, you're going to want to try and keep this straight so that it's a nice bow look. And then you're going to want to press these out to fan them. And fix your middle part if you need to. And then we have the basis of our bow. But to make it a necklace, I'm going to cut some yarn. You want a good amount so that you can tie it around your neck comfortably. Now that I have my section, I'm just going to cut that in half. And I'm going to tie them onto either end. And then I'm going to trim off the excess part, just so that my necklace looks a little bit cleaner. And voila! We have a bow necklace to wear to our party. So how did your necklace turn out? I hope it looks wonderful and I hope you're happy with the results. I'm going to turn it over to my next friend. I hope you enjoy the rest of our tea party. Have a good day.
And when Alice was done showing them how to make their very own playing card necklaces, they smiled approvingly at the dapper appearances. I look quite nice myself, if I do say so. Oh, let's see what happens next. The Queen of Hearts yelled, "Silence! Who's been painting my roses red?" Everyone seated round began to look at each other. Even though the Queen wasn't as loony as she had once been, she could still be fearsome at times. "I shall elucidate," tweeted the Mad Hatter.
Hello and welcome to the garden, where everyone is always welcome to have a cup of tea. I love having visitors to the garden, including the Queen of Hearts. Now, the Queen, she tends to like all of my flowers, but she prefers her roses. Now, as you can see, I have some beautiful white roses here. Well, the Queen, unfortunately, is not the biggest fan of white roses. Once upon a time, someone accidentally planted some white ones in her garden, and they actually needed to paint those roses red. So, unfortunately, that did not work out the best for them. However, I have a neat little trick for you guys using science to actually turn these white roses red. And I'm going to show you how to do that. However, beforehand, it would be a little mad to do some science experiments without some safety first. So remember, with any science experiment, always ask a grown-up first if you would like to do the science experiment. And then also make sure with anything, even if a science experiment is safe, never touch your nose, your mouth, your eyes. If you ever do, talk to a grown-up about it, and then they can make sure that you are safe. And also, as you can see, I happen to be in some tea party material attire. So I'm going to go ahead and get changed and we can get this science experiment started. Here we are, much better. Now for this experiment, we are going to need just a few things. First, of course, we are going to need our white rose, or any light colored flower will do. We are also going to need a glass of water, our food coloring. Of course, we are using red now because we are going to paint our rose red. However, any color will work. And we will also need a pair of scissors. Now, with these scissors, what we are going to do is we are going to trim the edge of our rose off. What this is going to do is this is going to open up the tubes that are inside of our rose. Just like a straw, the stem of the rose will drink the water, and that's what brings the nutrients in the water up to the petals itself. Now, in this case, not only does it bring water up, but it also brings up nutrients and food coloring. So, in this case, we are going to just add some food coloring to our water. Just like that. And then we let our rose have a drink. Now, this is the difficult part of the experiment. The last and most important part of the experiment is we need to have patience. This will take a little time before it is ready. So we are going to set this aside and we are going to wait until our rose turns red. And here we are, some red roses for our queen. Now, if you have some queens that prefer colors other than red, you may choose any color that you please for these flowers. So feel free to try this experiment at home, and I will see you guys soon. Goodbye.
When the Mad Hatter had finished explaining, they all turned to the Queen to see her reaction. Rather than shouting, "Off with her head!" she slowly smiled. Took a tea sandwich in her hand, walked over to the Mad Hatter, and stuffed it in the Mad Hatter's mouth. The Mad Hatter immediately began to do a merry jig. Then Alice, the Queen, and I all began to stuff the sandwiches into our own mouths. The sandwiches were quite delicious. The Queen, feeling quite pleased with herself, said, "It's a simple recipe."
Hello library friends, I'm Miss Amy from the Cesar Chavez Library, or the Queen of Hearts, and I'm going to show you how to make tea sandwiches. Today we're going to make two very basic sandwiches and one that's a little fancier. And parents, if you're having a tea party with your little prince or princess, you can pre-slice all of your crusts off of your bread and pre-cut your cucumbers so that you don't have to worry about using a sharp knife. Okay, so we're going to get started now with our first tea sandwich, which is going to be an egg salad. Can't go wrong with egg salad. I've already got the hard-boiled eggs and I've mashed them up in my bowl. I'm going to add a little bit of mayonnaise. I'm not going to give any measurements today because it just kind of depends on how many people you've got. And right now we're looking at just small groups, right? Just who we've got at home for our little tea party. I like to add a little bit of whole grain Dijon mustard. Again, you can make this as simple or fancy as you like. I like a little bit of this whole grain Dijon mustard because I think it adds a little zing and it looks pretty. You might want to use a cookie cutter and make some fun shapes. I'm gonna make some like a flower shape kind of for my egg salad. All right. So now we're just gonna take our little bit of egg salad and spread it on. Put our other piece of bread on there. And there's our first tea sandwich, which is egg salad. The second tea sandwich we're going to make today is cucumber cream cheese. You can make this vegan by buying a vegan cream cheese. I prefer, when I use cream cheese, to use a whipped cream cheese because it's easier to spread and I just like the consistency better. So rather than the brick cream cheese, you can get the whipped cream cheese that comes in a little tub. You also don't want your cream cheese to be cold just out of the refrigerator because it'll be really hard to spread and it'll tear your bread. So you might want to let it come not to room temperature, you don't want it to get too hot, but to just soften up a little bit. And your cucumbers should be sliced thin. Doesn't have to be super thin and they don't have to be like all the same, but you don't want it to be too thick. And I always peel my cucumbers first so you get the skins off, and I use an English cucumber because they're seedless. So again, we're gonna take our already trimmed pieces of bread and put on a nice layer of our cream cheese on both sides. See, this is why it's important for the cream cheese to not be cold, because then you won't be able to spread it easily. You can also freeze your bread, and that sometimes makes it easier to spread because the bread thaws really quickly. But we're just gonna do that. There we go. Okay, so now we're gonna lay on our little bits of cucumber and just make a nice, not too much. That might be too much, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And then put our other, okay. Now I am going to use the knife to cut this because you want to make them, you want to get two little sandwiches out of this. So let's see, I'm going to do it I'm gonna make triangles out of these. Again, kids, get your parents to help you cut your sandwiches. And there are our cucumber sandwiches. Our last tea sandwich, I'm going to make kind of a fancy one. I'm going to make a chicken salad, but I'm going to make what's called coronation chicken. Coronation chicken is a curried chicken. That's a recipe that was created for the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953. So when I make chicken salad for tea sandwiches, I usually grind my chicken up in the food processor because I think it just makes it easier to spread. You use cooked chicken, you can poach it, or you can bake it, or you can just use rotisserie, but I think it's easier to have it ground up a little bit than to have chunks because it's just easier to spread. So we're gonna add some mayonnaise to our ground chicken. And you just eyeball it. We're not going to use any measurements, just a little bit at a time, because you can always add more, but you can't take it out. So if you put too much mayonnaise in at first, then it's harder to fix that. So that looks good. And then we're going to put in some yellow curry powder. You don't want to do too much. Let's not overwhelm it, especially if it's a taste that you're not totally familiar with. And then you're going to add just a little bit of cinnamon. Again, I'm not using measurements, so I'm going to be really light with that. Just a little bit of cinnamon. I know this probably sounds a little weird. Cinnamon and chicken salad. But now is the secret ingredient, the not so secret ingredient. This is mango chutney. Chutney is like an Indian jelly. So we're gonna add, and it's gonna make this nice and sweet. So it's got some mango, and I think there's some ginger in here. So we're just gonna put a little bit in there and mix it in. And you can see it's kind of got a yellow. The actual recipe also calls for golden raisins, but we're not gonna do that today. Whoa. All right, so now we're gonna take more of our white bread. And this is why I like to grind up my chicken salad when I'm making tea sandwiches, because it's just easier to spread. This might have a little too much mayo in it, which is why I said you have to be careful. All right. And I think since I did triangles for my cucumber, I'm going to make some long fingers out of this one. Probably should have gotten bread that was a little bit bigger. Maybe get some of that big sandwich bread so that, oh, it's gonna squish out. So that it's not so thin. You can get bigger pieces. All right. So that's our third tea sandwich. So we've got our egg salad, our cucumber cream cheese, and our coronation chicken. We've got our finger sandwiches on the bottom. And usually when I have a tea party, I would have scones with jam or lemon curd and Devonshire cream. But today I've got a crumpet, which is kind of like an English muffin, like a real English muffin with marmalade on it. So we've got our tea sandwiches and our crumpet on the bottom, and on the top we've got our sweets. I've got some little bitty macarons and some brownie bites and some fruit. But you can pick any kind of little sweets, mini cupcakes, Madeleine cookies. I always have to have a little bit of fruit, which is nice. And now we are ready for our tea. And there you have a practically perfect tea. Practically perfect, but that's a different story.
Finally, I was the last to share. Well, you know how I love to make an appearance and a disappearance. At times, I'm not all there myself. Okay, friends, these are what you need to make our invisible ink art. So we need our 1/4 cup of baking soda, 1/4 cup of warm water, lemon juice, food dye, any color or colors that you like, 2 brushes, and paper. That's it. Okay, let's get started. So we're gonna take our 1/4 cup of baking soda and our 1/4 cup of warm water, pour the baking soda into the water, and with one of the brushes, you can mix it all together to try to dissolve the baking soda in the water as best as you can. But know that some of the baking soda will settle, so that's okay, don't worry about that. And then we will take the other cup full of lemon juice, take whatever color you would like of food dye, squeeze in a couple of drops, and then take the other brush and mix it all together. Okay, now we can take our piece of paper and with our baking soda solution, write whatever message or picture, draw whatever picture you like. So I'm going to do, let's see, and then that, and then now we just have to give it a few minutes to dry. Okay, now that our paper is dry, we can take our lemon juice solution with the food dye and using a brush, brush it over the paper. Let's see what appears. I see something. There we have the Cheshire Cat. Cool, huh? After I displayed my invisible ink trick, everyone began writing messages such as "eat me" and "drink me." Alice then glanced at her pocket watch. She said, "Oh dear, I'm late for a very important date. When I get home, I shall write a book about this place entitled Alice in Wonderland, Virtual Tea Party." Virtual tea party? We all looked around. What was that? And then the poor girl began to wander away. What a strange girl that Alice is. Well, as for me, myself, I prefer the shortcut.